Hi, welcome to the Best of Mount Shasta. This is the show where you get to meet the spiritual community of the Mount Shasta area. When people come up here, they go to the mountain, they go to all the beautiful nature that we have up here, the waterfalls, things like that. And they go to our little small downtown area and hit the restaurants and the crystal stores and go home again. And they never get to meet what's really happening up here, the depths of what's happening up here, the spiritual teachers, people that have lived here for a long time, and public just in general doesn't see them. And yet if they could meet with them and study with them, they would really take just giant leaps in their own spiritual development. And today we have one of those people. It's a great, great honor to have Joanna Cherry with us today here. How long have you been up here now? About 30?
About 32 years.
32 years. You might need to say how old you are.
I'm 80.
She's 80 years old. Can you believe? 32 years just sitting in the spirituality of this area. And she's gained a lot of insight. She's gained a lot of experiences. And that's what this area is about. And she's here to help people in their own spiritual development. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Joanna Cherry, and what a treat this is.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure.
It's great.
So tell us about yourself. Tell us, your journey. How did you get here? How did you get onto the spiritual? And then mainly, what is it about Mount Shasta that keeps you here, that you don't feel inclined to go somewhere else for a better spiritual experience?
Oh, well, I'll just start with that. Mount Shasta is a very powerful spiritual vortex. It has a couple of amazing things right inside the mountain. One is a fifth dimensional ascended master retreat associated with Saint Germain, as well as some other masters. And another thing is a Lemurian city of 3D people just like you and me. About 1.5 million of them live inside the mountain. They were in Lemuria, and then when Lemuria, they recognized, or some of them knew it was going to sink. So and Mount Shasta was in like the eastern edge of Lemuria, and so they moved into the neighborhood, and then they're pretty much enlightened, largely enlightened folks. And then when the smaller thinking people began to gather around and move west into America, they actually discovered a way to go inside the mountain. They have that kind of technology to create their light and create their air. And so and I know one of them, Sharula is her name, and she's from there, and it's real, and they're immortals. They don't age and die like most of us do. So anyway, it's a very powerful spiritual vortex mountain, and I can't imagine living anywhere else right now. This is great. I wouldn't move. But as far as my own spiritual path in this life began, I met Babaji again. I've known him a lot in other lifetimes or between lifetimes.
Babaji?
Babaji is a beautiful immortal master. He's written of in Autobiography of a Yogi. He's the main teacher, the main high being there. And I had known him before, but in this life, I hadn't been aware of that. And then, so when I was around 35 or so, I read for the first time Autobiography of a Yogi. And it was like, oh, this master, he's interesting. Oh, he's interesting. She's interesting. And then I got to Babaji. It was like, oh my God! I was like, who is this? Who is this being? And it was like, he was all I could think of for about 6 weeks. And finally one day I couldn't stand it anymore. I said, come here, and he did. But I couldn't see him.
Great.
I couldn't see him physically. It was like a whirlwind energy. Came into the room, and he moved right into my heart. And I thought, well, what's that? I didn't give him permission to move into my heart. But my whole life changed from that time forward. And
now you're discussing things that are really esoteric to the main public, and yet this is a really profound phenomena of how could a being be like that and do like this.
Yeah.
We don't see into those realities to see the mechanics behind that. So here you are seeing that now.
Right.
This is wonderful. Go on.
Yeah. Okay. Well, after meeting Babaji, I was living in Memphis, Tennessee, and my
And
life.
who would have thought Babaji would come to Memphis,
Oh,
Tennessee?
they're everywhere anyway. You
I know. Isn't
Yeah.
that interesting?
Yeah. So my 6 months went by after I met him, and then I would run into somebody on the street that I hadn't seen for 6 months. They said, "What's happened to you?" And I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you've rejuvenated 10 years." I said,
So people could see.
"Really?"
Yeah.
So I finally I really got that had happened. I had no idea of rejuvenating or anything like that. Just reconnecting with this very deep and very beloved master just changed everything, just everything. And then shortly I realized Memphis was no longer my place to be. That was also shown. I was guided. I was starting to hear messages. And so it was San Francisco is what drew me.
And what year would this have been about?
This was 76.
Okay.
Yeah, 76, yeah, 45 years ago. And so I then
So it was
moved.
Memphis, Tennessee, you were reading the autobiography of Yogi.
Yeah, I
love it.
there, right.
Because, we're aware now of, how many people are sort of awakening all over the world.
That's
but
right.
somebody sitting in Memphis, Tennessee may not know anybody else or that this phenomena is going on around the world.
Well, that could be, I guess.
And
Yeah, Memphis
I have
is
a
a big
little
old
dog.
Taurus city, very slow moving.
I have a little dog with me, so
Yeah.
he's getting a little
He's a
rambunctious.
very sweet dog.
But
love him.
please go ahead.
Yeah. So I moved to San Francisco, and just I had been working in regular jobs, and finally I realized that there was nothing that I could see that would happen from that scenario in my life that was of any interest to me at all, and so I just quit. I quit the last job, and I moved to Arkansas for the summer. And this is when I was still living in Memphis, of course.
Were you
into the
seeking
Ozarks.
spiritual, or just,
I wasn't aware that I was. I just knew I needed to leave the old life. And so it was in the Ozarks, and there was a spiritual community there, a homesteading community, and I got permission to stay on the land and help with the crops and stuff. And that whole life, I could feel this giant grindstone turning directions from one direction to a new direction. And that was my spiritual path. And it was after that, not long after that, that I met Babaji when I was back in Memphis. So,
and did you have the sense at the time that this was spiritual, this experience?
I didn't label it so much that way, but I felt.
Yeah.
I felt I started feeling the nature spirits and talking with them.
Wonderful.
And it was just, and there was a big ghost that wanted to take over my tent, and I had to deal with that. But I wasn't afraid, and it was just things. I started to wake up a lot more. And in San Francisco, 3 major teachings came my way. One was the teaching of the inner Christ, where I became a minister and then an ordained minister. And one was Leonard Orr, the rebirthing movement. I became a rebirther.
And that was very active then.
Yeah, and traveled with him and to Europe and such, with a group of others. And then the third was Saint Germain, who sent me to Mount Shasta after I'd become a minister, saying, "Please go there and give a class."
Could you? Would it be appropriate to ask if you could explain that first experience with Saint Germain?
Oh, well, I was at a teaching of the inner Christ retreat, which they had like once a year, and a friend of mine just kind of brought him up and said, "He's right here," and I said, "Oh," because I hadn't really met him before, and
but you had heard about him.
No, yeah, but I could feel him, and he said to me pretty directly, "Please go to Mount Shasta and teach a class." So I went to Mount Shasta, but the reason I went was not for me to teach so much as for me to learn. Because somebody put one of the green books into my hand, Magic Presence. I actually went to the place where all the green books of Saint Germain's
And
press
explain
were
for
sold.
the viewers, what are the green books?
The green books are from the Saint Germain press. It's out of Chicago, and it's the I Am people. The I Am reading room was in Mount Shasta, and I went there and I thought, so someone said, here, after a couple of days, this is yours. And it was the Magic Presence, which is like the second of the books, and they have great true stories in them. And I just relearned really about Ascension, because I've ascended a couple of times in the past. And so I went, wow, this is really real. I just got on fire with it as a possibility for my own self and to teach it. So I started teaching. Had begun to teach workshops in 1980 with Leonard and the teaching.
Can I backtrack you a bit?
Yeah.
What is Ascension?
Okay. Ascension is, most people think that if you call Ascension now, because it's a common word now, that you die, your body dies, and then your soul lifts. And that's what most people do, especially spiritual people. But what I call Ascension is really the spiritualization of all of the physical, which means the body as well. That means that when you get ready, and it takes a lot of work, because I've given it decades to work toward it, but we're doing a lot of other things as well. But when it's time for you to leave the planet, you take your body, you learn how to spin it up into light, into a higher frequency, so that there's no form left behind. That's Ascension. And a lot of people have done it, not just Jesus. We have a whole bunch of ascended masters.
And people have written about them through the years?
Yeah. People have written. Saint Germain is one, Babaji is one. There are a whole, there are a whole bunch. About 12 or 1,500 associations just with Earth. And there's some with other planets as well. So it's not that hard, really. It's just that we've thought things like that are hard. But it's just a matter of learning and opening up to it and being guided and allowing that information to start really affecting you deeply. And then you
have an understanding of the mechanics of what are necessary to go through to make that transformation? Yeah,
I do. I was shown pretty early on that you start to spin up. I said, what is Ascension? So they said, well, you start to spin your frequencies, and first you open your chakras. You make sure that every of your energy centers is open. And that means like not in the usual way, but sort of open to infinity. Just to infinity. And when that's done, then you begin a spinning energy. For me, I started out slowly and let it increase gradually and get faster and faster and faster. And then 3 things spin. One is the atoms, all of the atoms of your body go faster and faster and faster. Second is all the chakras, the chakra channel, faster and faster and faster. And the third is the aura itself. So all of these spin more and more and more and more rapidly. And then you go from your 3rd dimension up to the 4th, up to 5th. And the first time I did it, I went right on up to 6th, and I lost touch with my body. It was like I was just, it was gone in a way.
And yet you still retained awareness.
Yeah, it was. I could feel, I could see the room and all of that stuff, but I didn't feel my body. And so
how do you suppose your body? It went into that abstract awareness itself? Is why you didn't see it?
Yeah, it went into light, basically. It became light.
So it itself had a journey.
Yeah, and Babaji told me that if someone had entered the room, they wouldn't have seen me at that time because I was moving too fast. It's like one of those spinning fans. When they're stationary, they're solid, and when they spin up, you can see right through them. It's just the same principle. Yeah.
So, okay, so carry on. I hate
Okay.
to keep
No,
interrupting,
no,
but
no,
it's
it's perfect. You asked perfect questions.
the audience and even myself, let's
Right.
sort of dig into this and
Exactly.
see. Let's not bypass this
Exactly.
subject too quickly.
Yeah, no, 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 it's perfect. Your questions are perfect, so no apologies. So anyway, I started teaching Ascension immediately, not as something that I knew how to do, but something that I knew was possible. And then gradually I've learned more and more about it as I've gone along.
And is this available to the general public, or
Yeah, sure. The
and so-
teachings are, you just read find the green books. The
No,
Saint
but I
Germain.
mean, how people could contact you? Are you
Oh
still
yeah, well
teaching
that'll
this?
be at the end. Yeah,
Great,
sure. I'm still,
great.
So I give spiritual sessions, and if people are interested in those, I'm not traveling and doing workshops anymore. I did that for about 16 years, and
I think at 80 you could sort of stay in one place from now
Yeah,
on, and
maybe
people
so.
come to where you are.
But anyway, and it was interesting because in 1996, I was guided to go to India on no uncertain terms. It's very seldom that Babaji, who's really my own inner self, and my I am, he's very seldom he would say you must do this, but he said you must go to India. And I even was shown where to go. Was a little town called Badranath, which is a pilgrimage town way up in northwest India, above Rishikesh and all those. And so
And you went over there all by yourself.
no, actually I did. I was going to go with a man who was also interested in going, but he flaked out. And so I said to Babaji, well, then I want a traveling companion wherever I go. And so the first person I met in the two different places I went before I got to Badranath were each my traveling companions.
Wonderful.
Because that's just provided, when you ask.
When you're in
Right,
line
when
with
you're
the
in line.
spiritual.
Exactly. So I got to
And that's
Badranath.
one draw for why people should be pursuing the spiritual.
Yeah, that's for sure. Things work. They work.
I'm not going to interrupt anymore.
No. You interrupt as much as you want. Anyway, I got to Badranath, and 24 hours later, my whole life completely changed. I was shown that for the past 5 years, I had been bored with being a workshop leader. I ignored feeling bored. I continued to define myself as a workshop leader. And I was shown that, no, that's not who you are anymore. That's not what you want anymore. And I was so shocked because my teaching in the workshops was basically, you've got an inner self, learn how to listen to it and always follow it and let it always lead to new things. And here I was stuck. I let myself get stuck for 5 years, 5 whole years. And so I said, okay, I give everything up. I give it all up to you, to God. I said, take everything from me that doesn't belong with me anymore. And so for 3 days, I just emptied out and emptied out and emptied out and emptied. And at the end of that time, I felt I really was empty. And then I said, but how am I going to make a living?
Yeah, right.
And so...
And it's good you mentioned that, because that's a lot of people's concern.
Exactly. So immediately I was shown that I had spontaneously begun to gather beautiful pictures of masters that I loved, so I could also offer them to people who were teaching. And I only had like 16 or so at that time, but they had a big weekend for a while at Mount Shasta, around the Wesak energies, and so I had taken these pictures, just the not many that I had, and $5,000 came to me in that one weekend with these pictures.
Incredible.
And I could hardly believe it, but I hadn't thought of doing more.
Yeah.
But Spirit said, awakening humanity needs these pictures. Please increase, the number and get them out as widely as you can. I said, great. I dropped workshopping like a hot potato. I lived on credit for a little while. I contacted artists and photographers and got this whole wonderful bunch of pictures together, ascended masters and from different religions, Jesus, and Mary and those, and then the Krishna, and the ones from the Hindu religion, the Buddhist religion, and a lot that are not associated with any religion, ascended masters and masters. And I just loved every single picture, and they went out far and wide into the world. And people tell me, wherever I go, there are your pictures. So I feel wonderful about that. And about 10 years ago, I was guided to just go on spiritual retreat and to sell the business. So I did. So I'm basically a person on spiritual retreat now. So, but that was a very huge change.
And when you think about the spiritual path, just that of learning and knowing when to change and everything, even if a person just adopts the spiritual, stays in their 24-hour-a-day, lifestyle, that if they just know to pick those moments of when to stay and leave,
right,
that's a really significant thing right there. So that's a very practical result of the spiritual living in 3D reality.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times totally people burn out on a job, and they just like a lawyer job. How can you not burn out on a lawyer job? And yet they stay, maybe 50 years or 40 years in one job that they don't really like. And here I was feeling bored and not listening to it, and so finally
you just did.
I was opened up and helped to hear, and so then I was able to
That's
move
really
on.
significant.
It really is. It's important for all of us to be able to really hear the heart, and you don't even need to call it the I am presence, anything pompous sounding, or I like kind of deep self, the deep self, or the deep inner self, the true self. Those kind of words, because it's our best friend. The deep self is our best friend, and we learn how to listen, and how to ask questions and get answers, and then your whole life is just unfolds. It's just, a lot of times it's just perfectly ordinary, but and a lot of times it's also magical. Magical things can happen. So it's just so wonderfully recommended for every single one of us to be able to listen within to the heart. You can think of it as the feelings of the heart, more particularly than to the I am presence, or anything big or stuff. It's not stuffy at all. In fact, the God within is just absolutely free and joyous and non-judgmental and loving, infinitely loving forever and forever. And that's who we really are inside. That's who each of us are inside. And so when we learn to connect with this energy, and there's no judgment, you realize that we've projected judgment onto God, where it doesn't belong. We're just in our own image, because most of us judge. And so when we realize, no, there's no reason to judge, ever. Not any person, not any situation, because we've all absolutely done our very, very best with what we know every single moment of every single day and night, every single lifetime. And so if we make what we call a mistake, I don't think it's actually, we're able to make a mistake. We always do our best, but if we do something that then feels like, oh gosh, that didn't feel good, so we learn from it. We don't blame ourselves or put ourselves down. Why didn't I do better than that? No, at the moment, it was our very, very best, and so when we say, oh, okay, that didn't feel good, I think I'm going to learn from that. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to do better, very best I can, to not do that anymore. And that's really the way we're meant to progress, is, we go along and we make some pratfall, and we go pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off and say, oh, okay, I don't think I'm going to do that one again.
Lesson learned.
That's right. So regret is for poison. One of my favorite teachers, Mafu, says that regret is a poison to humanity. To learn and then move on and love yourself and forgive yourself if you failed yourself, anything against yourself, and just move on. So anyway, I did. I taught that about 16 years, and then and did the pictures then for about about 15 years, and then was now I'm more in a spiritual retreat and not doing that much active in the world. But I am working on the new timeline, and I need to explain what that is. Working with helping humanity on that, and working on really coming
So
to.
what do you talk, so define what you're saying about this timeline
Yeah.
of humanity.
Yeah, I will. I just want to say one more thing, that the other major thing I'm doing right now is I created a tremendous number of really difficult lifetimes in my past. And it's given me a whole bunch of stuff to clear, a mountain of stuff to clear. So I'm coming more to the end of that now, because I've worked so hard and so diligently for a long time. And then the other thing is this new timeline, which is it's only about 6.5 years, or maybe 7 years in my awareness, something called the new timeline. I didn't know what it was. I didn't have any, I've heard maybe the term somewhere, but it was not something I was connected with at all. But Spirit began talking with me about humanity on Earth is ready to create a new timeline now. And way back in 7 years ago, a little over 7, humanity on a deep unconscious level, on the fourth dimensional level, but more like the higher astral, the wise part of that fourth dimension, voted altogether without any outer awareness at all. They voted for a new timeline so that our old time could be changed. The past is all one. It seems to be linear, but it's actually all one. And so that means we can actually go back and change the past when we have the consciousness and the readiness for that to happen. So in the fall of 2013, people voted in a majority. It's got to be a majority. If it isn't a majority, forget it. We would have sunk like Lemuria.
So when you're saying
and
people
Atlantis.
voted, like on their soul level,
Yeah, on the soul level. You can
And
say it's on the soul level.
so they may not have a memory of having done that,
Right.
but they participated.
They don't have a memory, usually, on the outer awareness, but the memory is deep.
We're going to go a little bit longer, and I'd
Okay.
like to continue going longer if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Oh, that's fine, that's great,
Okay.
thank you. I'm enjoying being able to run off at the mouth.
Well, let's hear it all.
Sometimes it's fun.
Yeah.
So, anyway, when humanity just barely squeaked by a majority, it's like 50.01%. But that's all it needs to be for something to happen. So if a majority of humanity votes for something, then nothing can stop it. Nothing can stop it. It's like that thing about the most powerful thing in the world is an idea whose time has come. This is really like that. It's part of that. And so, but gradually over these 7 years, this 50.01% has increased to about 67%. So now we're a big fat majority who is ready for the new timeline. And so we started on this deep level, soul level, we started to see, well, what changes do we want? How do we want things to be different? What kind of different past or history now do we want? And so we realized that we didn't want any war. The cabal, the elite, they have been creating the wars for like hundreds of years. They even created our Civil War, and World War I, World War II, and all of those things. And humanity said, we don't want those in our history anymore. And so when they say things like that, then the masters, our own I Am presences, our own divinity, along with the masters who are helping us on earth, just begin to form like a fourth dimensional living reality of all of these, of the new way, of our new past. And so we have been at peace for a long time now, hundreds of years in this country, and much more in the rest of the world as well. And also when the Industrial Revolution came in, humanity was awake enough, because now we're awakening earlier. Our awakening is going back into the past. So humanity said no. A majority said we will not allow you, the industrial society, to pollute our earth our waters or our air. And since it was a majority then we have a much more pristine earth and non-polluting vehicles. So it's a new world, and it's going to happen all at once, in an instant. The Saint Germain talks a lot about this. Just from one instant to another, we will go from this past memory to a whole new past, which has led us up to a much more wonderful, like paradise, of a present on earth. So that's what I call the new timeline.
And that's interesting. It's a challenge to science.
Oh yeah,
Because
science doesn't get it at all.
right, because you're proposing an understanding from sight, that something that you've seen, something that you experience, something that you know from that level, and yet it's so different from how they think.
Right.
And that's where a lot of all of this is right now, of the belief and the disbelief, that kind of a thing. And, boxing what you're saying into a box when it's already growing out of the box.
Right.
So it's interesting because that's what I find a lot happening up here, is that people are seeing things in new ways. Mm-hmm. And you've been up here so long and so just seeped in the environment as it is allowing these experiences to happen. Uh-huh. And I hope you're around for the next 20 years to say, see, I saw that, way back then.
Well, actually, I think it's expected now within 6 months. So that's pretty amazing. Because we took a long time first to see what we wanted. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it's
and
been...
you're saying we see
humanity,
what we wanted. So humanity as a whole.
Right.
And it's not like a spiritual group here and, and a group of people there. And it's just the phenomena of humanity as humanity.
Right. And it's not even humanity as a whole. It's only it's the majority. It's the ones who are voting this in. The ones who have said no are now in a big minority. And so they are not part of what is happening with this, but they're not left out. They're going to be in their own second world, as I call it, which is what they're ready for now and what they want. So it's no judgment. They have all the same help and love and everything. They're divine beings, just as everyone is. And but the what I call the go world, or the first world, will actually be really a paradise of a world. And so it's the majority that devoted this in and that chose what the new world is going to be. And so several years went to that, and then the last 3 years or so has been actually getting ready to accept and step into what they have chosen. And that's been hard. It's been hard to release the past. And finally, 6 months or so ago, humanity released the collective past, but haven't been able to release their personal past yet. That's what's being worked on right now.
And how do you see politics interacting with this? Do you see that this is not anything that's occurring at that level? This is something that's occurring on another level? So it would almost be that this that's occurring on another level could have an influence to a certain group of people in this group and a certain group of people in this group, so that there's these sort of polarities existing on the earth. Uh-huh. But this that you're seeing of humanity, they're not representing a particular 3D group.
Right. No. It's basically our politics are going to be totally harmonious. There's not going to be this cantankerousness that we have now. It's people really getting along with one another and governing for the good of the whole, as is always was meant to be for America and some other democratic lands already, but has been largely corrupted. And so, but this is really how it's going to be now in the new world, a governance for the good of all, for the highest good of all.
Now, do you, being a seer, because that's what you are, you see something that others haven't yet seen, do you feel that, like you were talking about 6 months, that's on the basis of your sight, but
No,
Because-
it's from spirit. I always get things from spirit.
Well, that's what I mean. Your sight meaning
Oh, okay.
from that level.
Uh-huh.
And yet it will still be received from those that don't operate at that level.
Yeah, the change is unstoppable. When it comes, when it's ready, it's going to happen. Yeah, that's my understanding.
And just if you don't mind me asking these kind of questions, because I know this is the type of question that a person who's sitting here listening would be asking.
Right.
You know, the doubter Tom in them.
No, it's okay.
And
Good.
so is this something that you've been seeing on your own, or you find other people are seeing the same thing that you're seeing?
Some people do see it.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are really afraid or resistant to the idea that they're going to forget their past.
Mm-hmm.
And naturally so. It's a hard thing to think of
Do
happening.
you give up?
Yeah. And a lot of lives will be different. You know, a lot of people may have different close ones, or they may have some of the same and others different, and they may not even be on the earth, might be in the fourth dimension, or may have decided to do something different in their past. So it's not an easy thing to think of, but the main thing that I love about it, or to remember, is that every single person is going to be better off and happier than they were before, without exception. Every single one, and that includes in the second world as well, because they've grown a whole lot, because we're all in the same world together right now. So the no voters have also grown a great deal, now have a much happier world than they have now. So, but we'll be on the same planet, but on different dimensions, so we won't see each other. We won't be interacting anymore.
Now, say how you mean about that. That's an
Okay,
interesting.
we'll be in the, we'll be
perception.
solidly, others keep seeing humanity in the fifth. I don't say, I see us solidly in the fourth, and the second world folks solidly in the third. And it's still, that
So the
difference.
ones in the third still have the reality that they hold now, or they'll lose that grip on that?
No, they also, the time will change for everyone, for everyone. But their own past will now be better, just because they've been affected a lot by things that the majority is doing.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, so it's going to be a lot better.
So how long has this sort of experience that you've had been accumulating?
Since about, I guess, the fall of 2013, that's when actually the vote happened, although I didn't realize that for another year or two. But that's when I began to be told about it and to start working on it, to start working to bring people into the new timeline that would help it happen.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so then you focused your life on that aspect.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's been my main work, really.
Interesting.
Yeah. Past years.
And then how do you let people know, or it doesn't even matter that they do know?
No, it doesn't matter that they do, but one interesting thing has happened, that humanity, this majority that we're talking about, will come to a place where they need a particular thing. They need encouragement, or they need help to release the past, or they need this kind of help or the other. And so the masters that I work with, they pick that up, and then they say, okay, it's time for a meeting. And so they give me the words that humanity needs to hear at that time, or the teaching or whatever. And I write them down. I take them out to a little temple back behind my house, and I just stand up and speak the words and the encouragement and anything else I'm guided to add to it. And then every single person on their soul level who wants to hear the words tunes in, and their own I am presence translates my words to their language.
Yeah.
So everyone gets to hear everything that they want to hear. If they don't want to hear it, they don't tune in. It's up to them. But I've been doing that for years now, and so I guess that's actually my main active service.
Yeah.
So, to
And
be
you
a
know what's
speaker.
interesting is that when I moved up here and began to meet people, is that people are exploring courageously experiences that are not commonly known by other people. And I think it's really important to create a culture up here that allows that to develop, even though people will hear it and say that's just baloney. Yeah, it's not possible. You know, they'll just, you know, that's just where they're at. And I think that, you know, if that sort of air just kind of settles down a bit and people begin to look at, here's Joanna, here's another person, here's another person, here's another person. They're all opening the door to some new understanding. And a lot of that is really going on here. And I think it's really important, you know, for the bravery of you to even, you know, say it and to talk about it and to stand behind it. And, you know, let the rest of the people, or let the scientists, because that's who kind of governs our understanding of, you know, how things work, and we stand by that in order to move forward, that there is a big break now with science and consciousness, and, you know, being able to relate these sort of basic fundamentals of what you call, you know, the soul or the self or the I am, all of that, and then they're starting to find that within quantum physics and within other, you know, fields of study in science that they haven't been looking at from that angle. But it's the scientist who's coming to hear you and see what you say, and then go back to adopting what you're saying, and then trying to figure out not how to disprove it. Yeah, how does that work? Right. And I think my father was a PhD from Harvard, so I had that sort of intellectual inquiry sort of built into my nature. But I think that it's a component that you know, so that people can grow towards, because they will understand what you're saying in that way, in their language, and your perception will come to pass one way or another. Mm-hmm. But this is what I find about this area that's remarkable is, you know, you're quite brave to even speak about what you see, because it's so radically different from how people see right now. And to have that strength of your own self that can, you know, live with all that's different from what you're observing. Yeah. So I really, you know, want to commend you and appreciate, you know, what you're, you know, what you've, my little 4-year-old puppy is coming over to acknowledge.
Yeah. Say howdy.
But do you understand how I'm saying it? That
I do,
you know,
yeah.
You know, because it's you know, I've listened to you through the years, and you know, just a little here and there. When I came up to Mount Shasta, I started to feel Babaji, and then I looked, you know, people's websites, and I saw your website, and I saw your connection with Babaji, and I knew that, you know, there was guidance that I was receiving that was putting me in the right place. Uh-huh. And it was, you know, through that thread that you were alive on, uh-huh. You know, and so rather than, you know, discount it, I respected what I was experiencing, and immediately had respect for you because of your long association with Babaji and all that you had gained from it. Uh-huh. And I knew and that was back in 2008, and I knew right from that time, watch this woman, watch where she goes, watch where her thinking goes, watch what she sees, you know, and it's always been true that you do see before other people see. And you see very clearly, and I understand what you see because I could see what you're seeing, you know, so you know, you have support from community people that, you know, do understand what you're saying. But it's just, it's really beautiful, and it's really radical, and it's way out there. But somebody has to be out there first. And you're one of those souls. You're one of those people.
Thank you.
You know, and ever since I've sort of observed you from 2008 to where we are now, you've never varied from that, you know? And I just, you know, like to say that I honor you and I respect you, and
thank you.
You know, not that you need anybody's encouragement, but encourage you to be strong in what you see, and know that, you know, nothing else can try to take that away, because you're seeing something that they haven't yet seen.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
It's really remarkable,
Oh.
really remarkable. Do you want to say anything more about that, or
I feel I've just been kind of feeling like we're complete and can wrap up. But
Okay.
Unless there's any burning questions that you have.
No, I think just I felt compelled to ask if you'd like an interview so that people could meet you and get a sense of your journey, how you got up here, because everybody has that step to go through.
Right.
And some are, wanting to do that, but a little hesitant, and maybe gives them a little bit more courage.
Yeah.
And then also to know that even when you come up here, it's still a small group of people that are seeing things, that are understanding new realities, that are really, they're on their own still. And even so, know that, there are people to support what you're doing and to honor what you're doing and to encourage you to continue what you're doing.
I really appreciate the opportunity to share things, so thank you very much.
Yeah. And is this what you share in your spiritual teachings and
Yeah, some of it, and there's other things too, but yeah.
So just briefly before we end, what if people call and want to have a session with you, or however it goes, do they do it online? Do they do it?
Yeah, the email is best. The email address is at the end here.
Okay.
And so, yeah, that'd be good.
And then what kinds of things would they want to?
Okay. Well, in a session, basically, it's not what I call a reading. Is we tune in to both of our I am presences, and their I am presence is the one that guides the session through both of us. Either one might get messages, and we address questions that are important to a person's heart, and Spirit may bring up something else too. They say, there's a past life you need to know in order to heal it now. So we'd like to show that to you, or we'd like to give you some affirmations that will help you in your path. So really, Spirit guides the session. And I love that. It's not me saying, Joanna saying that I get this or that. No, it's
very profound what you're saying, and I think this is so much on the cutting edge. Really still is on the very, very cutting edge of spirituality in our country. And the fact that you've stayed on that path, you stayed true to that, that experience, the validity of that experience, and you help other people to see it. It's just remarkable, and I just really thank you a lot for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Right.
Thank you very much for joining us today at the Best of Mount Shasta. Hope you enjoyed this. I hope it gives you some thoughts, and just settle into your own quietness and listen again and see how it registers at that level. And thank you so much for tuning in, and keep abreast with what we're doing. We're here to introduce you to the spiritual community of Mount Shasta. Thanks so much for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Hey, that's great. Thank you so much.